Record Store Nation. You know what month this is? You got it. It's Rocktober. So I'm going to get to what Rocktober is all about after we, of course, thank our house band for welcoming us in. It is Diarrhea is Common. They were like one of the original punk bands. Diarrhea is Common, man. They were so big back in the day as one of the forerunners of like the punk movement, I swear to God. So they were out there. You know, now almost all of them are no longer with us, unfortunately. They still have the bass player and that's it. But Diarrhea is Common playing us in today. So thank you so much, guys. We appreciate that. So yeah, it's Rocktober. So I don't know if you know this, but this is TRS 62, 62nd episode. But every October we do a theme. We always have some kind of cool theme at the record store, and this year the theme, thanks to one Brian Trammell, is the Rock and Wrestling Connection. No. It's not Cyndi Lauper. It's not Captain Lou, the late great Captain Lou. Not Wendy Richter, none of that. But it's the Rock and Wrestling Connection. So what we did was we looked at all of the wrestling PLEs, or as some people call them, pay-per-views, PPVs. And you know what? I've talked about this many times. I don't know if I've talked about it many times on here, but I've talked about it many times in life in terms of music, is that a lot of bands that I have fallen in love with, I have found out about through theme songs from wrestling shows. I can think of Adelita's Way. I can think of Saliva. I can think of Evanescence. I can think of a number of bands that I actually, Daughtry, that I've fallen more and more in love with because they were used in wrestling pay-per-view theme songs. So Brian came up with this idea. I think it's a great idea. So each week for the next couple weeks for October, we'll be doing an album featuring the theme song from an album from a major pay-per-view. And in conjunction with that, it's kind of a package deal. It's kind of a crossover, as they like to call it in, I think, the Marvel universe maybe, or comics or whatever. We're going to be doing a crossover, and Brian will be doing reviews of the actual pay-per-views that these songs appeared on. So we are going to open it up with this one because it's just so ironic. As we were going through the list, it was just too ironic to skip this one, so we have to have this one in there. So we're starting off with the album Judas by Fozzy. The song Judas was actually the theme from, believe it or not, the song Judas that you know and love, was the theme for NXT's TakeOver in 2017. So just so crazy because the album and the song Judas is so synonymous with Chris Jericho and Chris Jericho's entrance music in AEW. But in 2017, when this album came out, he was still in WWE. And some backstory with Chris Jericho. He is one of my all-time favorites for numerous reasons. And I know that's very polarizing, and I'm just going to say what I have to say about Chris Jericho. The wrestling, outstanding. His longevity of his career, outstanding. The fact that he does a podcast. He's written numerous books. He's had a career renaissance, started with New Japan and now in AEW. Starting to falter a little bit in the ring. I can be the first to admit that. Starting to not be quite the 4.5, 5-star wrestler that he was not that many years ago. But still, always reinventing himself. And the fact that he's a rock star. Bottom line, he's a rock star with Fozzy. So yeah, he's controversial to some. I'm sure there's politics involved that I don't really care about. But I like the guy. One of my all-time favorites. And I always say, if there's anybody that you would ever trade lives with, it would be a guy who is a rock star and a wrestler, both. You know, it's like he does so many cool things, and he's led such a cool life that, not that I would trade with very many people, but Chris Jericho is one that I would definitely think about. So anyway, some backstory on Fozzy before we get to Judas. Band started in 1999. A couple first members were Frank Fonser, the drummer, and still with them to this day. And guitarist Rich Ward, still with them to this day also. So those two guys started the band. Jericho has referred to them as the bastard child of Metallica and Journey. And I can absolutely see that. Just the musical, the type of music they do, the style, the spirit of the music that they do, I can definitely see the cross between Metallica and Journey. The name of the band was originally Fozzy Osbourne, as a parody of Ozzy Osbourne, and interestingly, the first couple albums they did, as well as just their existence initially, was covers. They were doing metal covers. About a year into it, Jericho met them in a bar in Texas, joined the band in approximately 2000. They came up with this goofy, like, Spinal Tap kind of ish backstory, like this fake, completely fake, humorous, fraudulent backstory about Fozzy. They were always like fun and lighthearted, and then actually a couple albums in, they started getting more serious about the music and started attracting attention from some well-known rock acts. And so they started touring. They opened for some more well-known acts. They've had a lot of crossover, had a lot of people work with them from well-known bands. So Jericho would always take some breaks from WWE to tour with Fozzy. He totally took the music seriously. And by the time their fourth album came out, the first couple albums were all covers, but by the time their fourth album came out, which was all original stuff, the singles started making the charts. They started actually being taken seriously. So this album, Judas, is their seventh album. Came out in 2017. The single Judas came out just before the album was released, and it became Jericho's entrance music, first in New Japan, because he went there, and then he came to AEW when they started. Hit number one. The song Judas hit number one on many different charts. The album, for some reason, the song was really a high peak, but the album only ended up at number 147 on Billboard. However, it did hit number 79 in Scotland. So I could not find any reference of Canadian charts. You would think that with Chris Jericho being so well known from Canada, that it would have placed highly on the Canadian charts, but not so much. So, but I'll say, even at a number 147, that's a hell of a lot better than I've ever done on Billboard, so not bad for a wrestler. So Judas, the album, like I said, seventh album, it is 11 songs, 42 minutes. Did include the lyrics, so I was very happy about that. What was interesting, out of 11 songs, Jericho himself only wrote or contributed on 3 of them. So 8 of the 11 songs were the other band members, mainly predominantly the guitarist Rich Ward, but then Jericho contributed writing credits on 3 of the songs. So, all right, let's get into it. So this is Rocktober, and we are covering Judas by Chris Jericho and Fozzy. So first song is the title track. It is Judas. Opens like any normal hard rock song. It immediately pulls you in. You probably already know this song. Wrestling fans for sure know it immediately. I wonder how much crossover there was with Judas, though. We as wrestling fans all recognize it immediately from the very opening of it. But I wonder how many people know that song either because they happen to be passing on a channel and Jericho was on or AEW was on and they heard that song and it brought them in or whatever. But really interesting. I'm just curious how many other people know, how many outsiders, as it were, know the song Judas. So the beat is intoxicating. They're listening to it closely because I'm so used to hearing it blast on speakers, at arenas and stuff, but listening to it close or blasting on my TV when Jericho's coming out. But which, ironically, they don't use it anymore for him. I think that's a big miss, because the song they use for him now pales in comparison. It's his own, and it's Fozzy, but it pales in comparison to what Judas is. So, but listening to it carefully now, for the purposes of this, the piano on it is actually kind of a low-key highlight for me. So the story is pretty obvious. It's how he became a Judas, betraying everyone in his life. I think it's an excellent song. I'd be really high on it, even if it wasn't for the Jericho connection. I really enjoy this song. I think it's a great song. I've probably heard it more than just about any song the last couple of years, because it would come on pretty much weekly on AEW and on pay-per-views and on everything else. So it's just so associated with him, and going to shows live and hearing Judas play. So what was funny listening to it now was that I knew the lyrics for the first verse, I knew the lyrics for the chorus, but then, because I've heard it literally hundreds of times in the last couple of years, I've heard it on AEW, but second verse comes on, I'm completely clueless. I'm sitting there following along with the lyrics, but I'm clueless because they stopped playing it after the chorus. So I had no idea what the second verse was. So great song, great start to the album. The title track, Judas, just fantastic song to start the album. So, all right, second song is called Drinking with Jesus. Actually has kind of a very Kiss feel to it to open up. Very driving guitar. And knowing Chris Jericho is a huge fan of Kiss, that totally makes sense. And I'm sure the band that he's surrounded with is also very big fans of Kiss. So main lyric here is, "Fucked up, I'm drinking with Jesus." So I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's going to not play on too much radio stations, and that's gonna end them up getting some booze and brickbats from some people. So, but hey, it's only wrestling, right? You know, when stuff happens in wrestling and it doesn't get any commentary from the media in general, it's because it's only wrestling, you know. So he can sing "Fucked Up, I'm Drinking with Jesus" and doesn't cause a lot of controversy. So definitely a lot of religious terms dropped here, used for whatever, just effect, basically, I'm sure. Seem like the lyrics are secondary to the fact that it's hard rock and secondary to the music itself. I think Jericho's voice sounds great. But honestly, I'm not reading too much into the lyrics of this because drinking with Jesus, okay. Have a cocktail with Jesus. Good for you. So, but decent song. Like I said, kind of a Kiss vibe to it. And don't let the lyrics bother you. So, all right. Third song is called "Painless." Immediately hard pulsing guitar and bass. Song is about death, about suicide, drifting off into a coma. Actually, as I was reading through the lyrics, it sounds like a little bit, just slightly slowed down version of Judas as far as the music goes. So I'm thinking, is this like a companion song where the Judas kills himself because of all the people he betrayed because he's so upset with what he's done with his life and what he's done to those around him? So at the end, he's singing about finishing him off. Don't leave me here this way. So it's definitely, like I said, a song about death and a song about suicide. And the fact that there's that connection, that slight music connection, the music itself slightly sounds like Judas, makes me think that it was like part two of Judas. And look at what you've done to me. Look at what I've done to myself. This because of the betrayal and all the terrible things that I've done in my life and betrayed all these people. Now I need to kill myself, and it's going to be painless. So, all right, third song is "Painless." We're going to flip the album over. We are going, because, you know, we like vinyl too. We're going to pay some bills, and we will be right back with the second half of Judas by Fozzy at the record store. Listen to these sponsors, and we'll be right back with Record Store, guys. All right, we are back at the record store. It's Rocktober. I mean, there is no other way to put it. We are hot and heavy into the month of Rocktober. Theme every year in October at the record store, and this year it is the Rock and Wrestling Connection. So that being said, we're reviewing Judas by Fozzy, which was an NXT soundtrack song for TakeOver in 2017. So little known fact that it wasn't just the Jericho entrance song in AEW for all these years. So we're talking about Judas. It was grabbed from the CD stack on the wall, which we take a minor detour in October, and we curated specific albums this time, as it were, as opposed to randomly grabbing it like we normally do. The CDs. I don't know, what did you think I was talking about? Anyway, all right, so back to side two of Judas, Fozzy. The fourth song on the album is called "Weight of My World." It starts out with some vocal tricks with some echo and some muffled stuff, and, you know, very just heavy metal cliche kind of sound to it. There is some cool guitar, almost like a metal version of The Police. There's something very specific and very special about the specific song, or the guitar sound of The Police, rather, Andy Summers and the guitar sound of The Police. And this sounds like a kind of a metal version of that type of guitar. So another kind of an apology song. I think the writers in this band, which Jericho did not co-write this one, but the writers in this band have some self-esteem issues because they're always apologizing or complaining or depressed or whatever. So on this one he sings, "I can't be fixed. I hurt everyone I love." So kind of continuing the Judas theme there. So maybe it's a concept album. Who knows? Kind of another woe is me song, "Weight of My World" in the fourth spot. Then we have the fifth song is a strong rebound. It's called "Wordsworth Way." Kind of hard to say without like specifically very cautiously saying so. Wordsworth Way. So a very slow, hard groove to start to this song. Jericho did co-write this one, and interestingly, this is the first song I think that he co-wrote on the album. Interestingly, the vocals are very clear here, very well produced, very front and center. So I'm like, interesting. Let's see if that continues. So anyway, this is a love and loss song. He found a girl he loved, and she passed away, and it crushed him as a young man, probably a teenager, can't tell, teenager, young man. But but it crushed him and it left him scarred for life. So he seems fixated on the house that he lived in when this happened. I would imagine Wordsworth Way is the name of the street that the house was on. So this song, I mentioned Kiss earlier. I mentioned some other bands, even the Police on the last song, but this one has kind of a GNR vibe to it. It's very good, very good. I will say, just really proud. It's a weird thing, but very proud when a wrestler is fronting a band and sounds as good as this song does. So Wordsworth Way, definitely one of the highlights of this album, even though it's depressing, like most of the rest of this album. So, all right, sixth song is called Burn Me Out. I mentioned bands that it reminds me of, and this one reminds me of White Zombie and or Rob Zombie, either way. Very pulsing beat, that very, I guess you could say ECW sound, because that was what ECW, the original incarnation of ECW, used a lot, was White Zombie stuff. Burn Me Out is a very angry song. I guess listening to this, I don't listen to metal a lot. I listen to it here and there with all the other genres of rock that I like. So, but I'm convinced that metal guys are always angry, always depressed, or both. Take your pick. Either way. He sings Kill Me From the Inside. He sings Use Me Till There's Nothing. So it's another downer. Good driving, hard rock beat for sure. But Burn Me Out, just yet another depressing song, and angry and just pissed off and just you name it with these metal guys. I guess Stryper was like the only band I can think of. They were the Christian rock band. Maybe they were uplifting. I don't know. So, all right, seventh song is called 3 Days in Jail. Jericho co-wrote on this one. It starts with some nice keyboards. There's a nice addition on metal to use some keyboards, some nice synthesizer here. So you don't hear it very often, but here it worked. Again, vocals are very clear and very focused and very featured. So interesting that the three songs so far, two of the three songs so far that Jericho played a role in the writing of, the vocals are very clear. So this one, extremely Linkin Park influenced. The vocal style, it's very rap. In fact, in the middle of the song, a rapper comes on and sings the middle part of the song all together. So, nice change of pace in terms of the performance. It's got that Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit kind of sound to it. But just like I said, very nice change of pace considering the rest of the album and the similarity, I guess, of the rest of the songs to each other. So, of course, I don't even need to say it's depressing, because it is. 3 Days in Jail, it's about him sitting in a jail cell for whatever it was that he did, and he owns up to it, and he is miserable because he's sitting in jail for 1, 2, 3 days, as it were. So, like I said, a plus on this one is the fact that the rap guy comes in the middle and just completely alters the song, especially from the rest of the album. So I guess you could say it's a highlight in that way, in the sense that it's different from the rest of the music on the album. So 3 Days in Jail, not bad, not bad. Eighth song is called Elevator, and guess what? It is the only... Well, it's not the only, but it's the first uplifting song on the album. It's rare. It's definitely rare. So Elevator, he's singing that he is your elevator. He's going to lift you up. He's going to pick you up when you are low. And I'm just like blown away by this. It's like a positive message from a metal song on this album. I am bamboozled. I'm shocked. I can't take it. I can't believe it. Elevator is actually a positive message on this album. So, and of course, it's a very short song. It's a really short song. So they're not going to throw you too much positivity on this album. So that Elevator song that we have that's kind of uplifting, yeah, we're going to keep that nice and short. Let's get that in the 8th spot as if it never even happened. We'll just slide that in there and move on. So, all right, 9th song, another one of the highlights for me. It is called Running with the Bulls, and it's not about the Chicago Bulls. It's not a basketball song or anything like that. You might have thought that. Nor is it about the Bulls running with the Bulls in Pamplona. So it is called Running with the Bulls, and it is the third song that Jericho co-wrote, the third of three. Looking at the lyrics, there is a lot to this. It's a long set of lyrics on this song. So there's a lot to it. This one, I will say, the vocal is not front and center. It's not featured prominently like on the other couple songs, so maybe that was a false theory, but I don't know. It was a theory that worked on 2 of the songs, but not on this one too. So this one, Running with the Bulls, after Elevator, which was a positive song, I will say I think this one is positive too. So there's 2 songs in a row that are positive. So they're going for a change of pace, just changing the game a little bit in the middle of the album. So positive message, I think. No matter what life throws at you, keep going forward, keep pushing on, keep running with the bulls, as they say in the song. So I think it's definitely a rare metal song in the fact that it's preaching perseverance. Definitely rare on this album, that's for sure. There's a couple vocal tricks on here. Not, I'm not usually a huge fan of vocal tricks. There's parts where he's muffling his voice. It's unlike the other songs where he had the credits in, so it's got a little bit of a different sound to it. I just really appreciate this song. Running with the Bull is definitely one of the highlights and a very, very good song at number 9. So then we get to 10, which is called Capsized, and it is, of course, back to the woe is me. He's drowning in his sorrow. He's drowning in his loneliness. He's capsizing in these waves of despair. So yeah, he's capsized. So has a nice beat, real throbbing beat. Has a very good guitar solo, a really good guitar solo. I actually would liken it to Slash on this. I said in my notes, I wrote down that it was Slash-esque. So I had to think about the spelling on that. And as a regular listener of the show, you know how much I like tempo changes. There are a couple of tempo changes on this song. They're not huge, but they are tempo changes nonetheless. So I was definitely sucked in on Capsize. So I like that. But damn, metal guys, cheer up. Come on. It's not that bad. Really. It gets better. I mean, it's got to be better now than it ever was for you in life. Why are you writing such depressing stuff? And like everything is woe is me, I swear. So anyway, Capsize at number 10. Couple of nice elements of that song. So Capsize, good song at number 10. And then 11 is called Wolves at Bay. It's the closer on the album. It's called Wolves at Bay. Just a pulsing, fast-paced, prototypical metal song. The song of his adversary. It's about his adversary, possibly his mate, I'm not sure, who makes him miserable, or who he makes miserable, probably a combination of both. Probably a mutual cat and mouse game with whoever he's singing about, whether it's a partner, co-worker, best friend, whatever, wife, husband. So just another metal song to me, honestly. Not a real strong closer in the sense that nothing really stood out about this song. I think they could have picked another song to end the album with, to end it more strongly. But overall, I will say it's a hard rock album. That's what I can say about it. No time for power ballads. Not a single power ballad here. Maybe try one, Chris. Maybe do a power ballad. Let's see what you can do as far as any kind of, like how Def Leppard and Poison made their money on power ballads. Let's see if you can do something like that. Even Metallica had a big power ballad. So I would say for an album by a band with a pro wrestler as the frontman, it's very good, and it's way better than an outsider would expect. But frankly, it's not U2, it's not Bob Dylan, it's not The Pretenders, it's not Tom Petty, it's not any of these great traditional rock and roll writers that are profound. It's not anything like that. Depth, it does not have. Depth, it does not have. But like I said, in terms of like the great historic Lennon and McCartney, I know that Jericho loves Lennon and McCartney. It's not anywhere near as profound as any of these names that I'm mentioning. It's just a hard rock album. That's all it is. It's not offensive in any manner. It doesn't suck in any manner. It's not the best album I've ever heard. It's a good album. It's a fun hard rock album, even though I say fun, but even though most of it is depressing. It's not a fun album per se, but it's a nice little rock and roll hard rock record. So that is what I will say about Fozzy, about Judas by Fozzy, their 7th album. I'd check it out, you've heard the song. I think that song is definitely the highlight of the album, but there's a couple other good tracks, that are on there, so I think it's definitely worth checking out. And I think if you immediately discount Chris Jericho and or Fozzy because of who he is, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, because I think there's some good music there. So that is it for this episode of The Record Store for Rocktober. Rocktober just getting started. We got a couple more episodes coming for you. Rocktober rages on, and that being said, thank you to Brian for producing. Definitely stay tuned on the network and listen for his review of Takeover, that is the accompany episode to this episode of The Record Store. I'd like to thank him for producing this, making it sound much better than I really am. Thank you to Fozzy and Chris Jericho for not only the good music, but also the many years of entertaining in the wrestling business. And thank you to you guys, the Record Store Nation, for listening, indulging me in being able to talk at least once a month. This month there'll be a couple episodes this month. So indulge me and letting me talk about wrestling on the WTF News Desk and on Shooting the Shiznit. But thank you for indulging me letting me talk about music on the Record Store. So I appreciate that. And if you are a Patreon member, stay with us because we will, of course, be revealing is it my favorite song or is it the song that was on the pay-per-view? Which will it be? So, all right, join us next time on the Record Store. Rocktober rages on, and we will see you soon.